Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And our response lies our growth and our freedom. Viktor Frankl. My guest on this episode of Passing the Torch is an Air Force veteran and 24-year CIA veteran specializing in paramilitary, counterterrorism, and clandestine operations. He served in 6 overseas posts, including as chief of station and as a founding leader of the original Bin Laden task force. As chief of operations in the CIA's counterterrorist center during 9/11, he coordinated special operations with U.S. military and federal partners. A former Special Activities Division officer, he led missions across Central America, Peru, and the Philippines, retiring at the Senior Intel Service 2 level. He now co-owns Camp X and trains special operations forces worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome best-selling author, Peter Pan refugee, someone who is tied for first for my favorite all-time Air Force pararescue airman, and someone who, per Covert Black, stated is a legendary CIA operations officer. Passing the torch with Ric Prado starts now. First and foremost, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining me, Ric.
Thank you much for the invite, Martin. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, and I got to be honest. When I said you're tied for my first, I got to give a shout out to Robert Hamilton Owens. He's the other half of that tie.
Yep. He's quite a character.
He is. He is. I kind of just wanted to jump right to your book because I read your book maybe 4 months ago, and just by initial look, it's pretty daunting. I mean, it's a very thick book, and I see you got it in the background there. But I mean, just really, it was captivating from the first page, and you write with such heart and passion. I mean, I just have this image. I feel like I was there and I could see the silver spurs on the wall. And it just left me speechless and just filled with emotion. So I wanted to give you that feedback about your book.
Well, thank you. You know, the book was written from the heart.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things in my life that I always wanted to do as a child. I wanted to be special military and jump out of airplanes, and I wanted to be James Bond and all that other stuff. But I never ever thought of being an author. And as a matter of fact, it was Covert Black, my then boss, who for several years was on my butt about, you got to write a book, you got a special story. And eventually, they beat me down, him and a couple of other important people in my life.
Yeah.
So I went and did it. In writing, it was actually the easy part, because first of all, it's from the heart. And second, all I did was try to pay back this wonderful country, my debt of honor, for taking my family in and allowing us to live the American dream.
Yeah, no, I love that. You sound like you're just full of excitement, and I've been following your content just, on social media, LinkedIn. Do you have any upcoming projects that you're excited or passionate about?
Yeah, recently we've had a group of individuals that for the last year and a half have been trying to get an audience for getting the book on screen in the form of a series, and we've gotten some traction in the last couple of months with three-letter state, what do you call them?
Organizations.
Organizations, yeah, CBS, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's
Or
that.
networks.
Yeah, networks. That's what I was thinking. I couldn't think of the word. Three-letter networks. They're very interested. They've asked for a formal briefing, and that would be such a big deal because, again, the book is sold over 100,000 units,
Yeah.
which is very, New York Times bestseller #8. But something like this can project my message to a completely different level, and that's what it's all about. What my agency is all about, what my colleagues in these agencies are all about. As you mentioned, I have 2 alma maters: first Air Force Pararescue, and the other one, of course, CIA.
Yeah. Man, I know, like, usually I like to kind of warm up with episodes, but there's just so many things that I just so fascinated, intrigued by you. I've talked to Scott McGregor about you, and I've watched, you've done some podcasts that are, I think, like 2 or 3 hours. I've sat and watched those, read your book. And your alma mater, right? That's interesting the way you put that with the Air Force and CIA, because typically with that term, we always think of college, but I do like that regardless if you were pararescue or in the CIA, most people spend their lives trying to be seen. You did the complete opposite. You spent yours trying not to be. The work that you did throughout decades and generations at the world and global level, it wasn't designed for applause or understanding or even acknowledgement. Everything you did just lived in silence, moral gray areas, and in consequences that followed people home. With Black Ops potentially becoming a TV series, that silence is breaking, and I'm wondering what's something that shaped your identity in secrecy. Because when something that shaped your identity in secrecy becomes something visible to becomes visible to uh, millions, what does that mean to the man who lived it? I know it's a long question, but I was trying to set the
No, I mean,
stage.
I have 55 years of service between pararescue, riding rescue, and the agency, and then I did another 6 or 8 years with Blackwater, doing the same thing for support of our special operations
Yeah,
in the military. Um, and like I mentioned earlier, I never had an interest in the publicity. I did not join social media until I wrote the book because it was part of my contract that I had to join social media, not even LinkedIn, because that just wasn't me.
yeah.
Um, but when I was confronted by people that I trust and have influence on me with the fact that I had a story that could help clarify what my agency specialty is all about, not showcasing, of course, air pararescue in Blackwater, but primarily the agency, because as you know, CIA gets a terrible rap in
Yeah.
Hollywood and in the novels. We're always the bad guys, and you know, Martin, we have 140 some stars on the wall at CIA of people that have given their lives, most of them anonymously, for this country. And a third of those are post 9/11. And I was chief of ops in CTC when 9/11 happened. So that means that some of those folks I sent into harm's way. So the tipping point was when this lady named Annie Jacobson, a fantastic writer and a very good friend of mine, said to me, he says, you're always complaining about how badly your agency is represented. You have the perfect venue to doing this.
Yeah.
And she hooked me up with my agent, and the rest is history. But yeah.
She actually wrote one of the reviews, or I saw one of the things on your book. So that was, yeah. Shout out to Annie Jacobson, because I was looking at who wrote all the. I always do that when I read books, like who gave reviews and positive feedback. And her obviously Covert Black was who I mentioned earlier, but Annie Jacobson, those were some great words that she provided.
Steve Cole is also on that, who was also very supportive. Steve,
You you mentioned like you said the stars on the wall, and they don't have names. Is that correct? The
some,
stars on the
some of them do. The way that the setup is you see the wall, it's got the flags on the side,
yeah.
and then there's a shelf with a glass, and there's a book there, and some of them are filled in, some are not, because again, their name or their presence, even 30 years later, would be an issue if that came out. So well, I would venture to say that a good majority of them are anonymous. Yeah.
That's tough, but obviously people know, they look at a star and they can feel something. So it's more than just a star, it's a name. But what would you say is the biggest? You mentioned some of the I don't remember the exact phrase or term you used, but it was to say negative criticism about the CIA. What's the biggest misconception people have about actual people working for the CIA?
Well, the number one thing writ large is the fact that we get blamed for doing things unilaterally. Like we did this without government approvals. We did this on its own, and that is a giant BS flag.
Yeah.
We respond to the President of the United States. We're the only federal agency that has what's called Title 50 authorities. Title 50 authorities means that when the president signs a finding, in many cases a lethal finding, we are legally able, outside of the United States, of course, to carry out his or her wishes. So, that things like, well, the CIA screwed up Bay of Pigs. No, they didn't. CIA had a very solid plan that because of politics, they changed it to a completely different scenario, and it cost the death of hundreds of men and the misery of the Cuban people for over 60 years. So I think that that's one of the biggest, is that misconception that we are rogue. But in Hollywood specifically, what is portrayed is the guy is double dealing, he's a backstabber, womanizer, heavy drinker, selling secrets or whatever. And that is such an injustice because, like you said, I have 6 overseas tours. I have a full family. I've been married 44 years come this year, September. So, and I'm not the exception. Don't get me wrong. There is divorce and there are stresses and but most of them are good family men and women. And the reason the stars was important to me because I really wanted the sons and daughters of those people on the star wall to know what daddy or mommy did during the GY.
Yeah.
So
So, obviously Black Ops may become a TV series. I mean, to your point, like behind the camera, behind the drama are real people, real death, real moral cost. What's one truth about covert operations you refuse to let Hollywood soften or sanitize?
that's been part of the negotiating process for trying to get the book on screen. And I just want the facts as they are. I don't want politics to intrude on it. You read my book; it's totally apolitical. I do not, I speak history, and when there's black eyes to be given, I give them. But it is a very fair account of what the agency does, and that's what I'm hoping, and that's what we will be negotiating. That's one of those non-negotiable points is we
Yeah.
present the agency in a realistic light. It ain't all positive. That was made of humans. We all have mistakes, but I think that's the number one goal. There is to project something that gives kids hope. I watch TV with my wife, and we'll watch a documentary. We're watching a series, and I've seen a trend that the majority of the principal characters are usually so flawed. These are individuals that everybody's divorced, everybody's having problems with their kids, everybody's and they're most of them are raging alcoholics or drug
Yeah.
users. And I sit there and I go, I didn't grow up watching that. I grew up watching Mike Nelson and Wyatt Earp and all this kind of stuff that, they gives you an aspiration of what you want to be. Um, to me, I think is undermining our society when everything that's portrayed is that humans, especially in our collective business, are so flawed that that's normal, and that is absolutely wrong. On the contrary, you don't get into the agency to make money or to seek fame. All right. I went through spy school with 3 or 4 guys who had master's degrees and lawyers that were starting out as GS-11s, where they could be in a firm making 6 times the money that we
Yeah.
started out at. So, and I think that that's a humbling thing for the majority of people to understand, is that these people have one thing: we're patriots. We appreciate what we have.
You talked about history. It's more than just you write. You wrote about history, but it's from a different perspective because from you it is actual lived first person history that you saw and experienced with your own eyes. But what's the most uncomfortable truth about covert warfare that viewers need to be forced to sit with?
Well, that's a tough question because there's so many of it. Um, I think primarily the biggest misconception is our loyalty to the agency and what the agency is
Yeah.
basically founded on. Like the US military, we are supposed to be, that has changed and hopefully it'll be changing back, but we're supposed to be apolitical. When I was in the agency, I was not allowed to have a political sticker in my car in the parking lot. Okay. We don't do politics. We don't do policy. We steal secrets and we do covert action. That's what we do.
Um, but looking back on how did you personally decide where the real ethical lines, how did you personally decide where the ethical line was when the rules were unclear, but the consequences were permanent?
Very good question and very easy answer. I've never done anything that wasn't for the right reasons.
Yeah.
I went into the agency, you read the book. I was a little bit of a jerk growing up, getting in trouble, getting in fights all the time and everything.
Yeah.
And once I got into pararescue and once I got into the agency, I said that's gone. And I always tell people this, I never took a paper clip home from the agency. I could have just accidentally, but I never did because for me, it was sacrosanct. I mean, in one very esoteric aspect of my agency is that our integrity is everything because we operate 99% of the time, we operate solo. So whatever an asset tells me, if I change that, if I enhance that, if I extend it, I make things up, nobody's going to know. So for us, if you want to get fired within 2 minutes, lie about your reporting, about the intelligence you're collecting. So it's. I think that that's the bottom line for all of it. I think that it's people that understand that they're not in it for fame and fortune. They're taking risks that most of them will never be recognized. I was in the military. I got my medals and I got my beret.
Yeah.
In the agency, the same badge that I had when I started as a GS-10, only the picture changed. Blue badge, I retired, like you said, an SIS-2. It was the same identical badge. The only thing that had changed was the aging picture. So there's no walking around and going like, oh, that guy is a senior rank, or that guy is from the airborne part of the paramilitary. No, you just got
Yeah.
suits walking back and forth doing their work. So
Did you say like a lot of the times the missions or people they work solo just by themselves?
yeah, the basic modus operandi for us is you have a cover facility. You're either State Department, Department of Defense. You may be under commercial cover. You live those jobs. When I was in an embassy, I had embassy work to do until I was, working with the liaison services, and then that's different. Um, but you do that during the day, and you meet people, you make contacts, you have lunches, you start recruiting individuals. You're also either recruited or have been passed to you assets. I've handled assets that had more experience in espionage than I did because they've been on the books for 20 years.
Yeah.
But those you do at night, you do on your own, and you get in your car, you do a 1 or 2 hour surveillance detection route, making sure you're not being followed to the meeting. In my case, since most of my work was counterterrorism, uh, I had to do the same thing on my way home because I couldn't afford meeting with a terrorist like I did in Latin America, a guy that I personally recruited from a very bad organization, to drag that heat home. So my surveillance detection routes coming back home were even longer than the ones going to the meeting. So it is a solo program. Um, Places like Iraq and Afghanistan were a little different because there we were in a war theater. So we did have, sometimes we had drivers and shotgun guys that would help us get to a meeting, just because it was a very non-permissive, environment.
So just working in that type of um parameters, solo, how has that impacted on the personal side? How has that impacted your ability to build relationships, healthy relationships?
Do you mean at home or professionally?
We'll say, but like maybe separate from your wife, but we'll say just with social, like your friends, and
Okay.
then also professionally.
Yeah, I mean, with the friends, you tend to hang around with like-minded animals, birds of a feather kind of thing. Because one of the things that helps the agency stay cohesive as far as our friends is the fact that we have nobody to tell what we do to, except people that are in the know And even that is need to know basis, but
Yeah.
at least everybody, oh yeah, that's Ric Prado. Yeah, he's for CTC, blah, blah, blah. My neighbors, until I dropped cover when I was chief of ops, after 9/11, my name became too public with the agency and testifying and all this other stuff. So I dropped my cover. And my two really good friends, one a Secret Service guy, another a lieutenant in the police department there, when I told them, they go, yeah, we figured you were something not State Department. We don't look at the State Department, but they never said anything. And I never admitted it until it was legal for me to do so.
No, that's funny. I want to tie that back into, I'm gonna want to jump around a little bit. Uh, just going, from fleeing Cuba as a child, just to leading the most dangerous missions of your life. Was there a specific moment that shaped you on who you became when no one was watching?
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that God has a plan for all of us. He puts that path in front of you. And if you have the fortitude to follow it, you will have a good life. I've had you know, I pinch myself every morning kind of
Yeah.
life. Um, but I think that God also forges your metal as you go along. You mentioned, the fact that I was Cuban born. I had to leave Cuba at the age of 10 by myself to an orphanage in Pueblo, Colorado, through a Catholic program called Peter Pan. And living in an orphanage in Pueblo, I mean, Pueblo's a blue collar town now. You could imagine back in 1962, um, you had 4 or 5 different cultures, 2 or 3 different languages, and a lot of pissed off kids because nobody likes being an orphan. So that in itself, being separated from my idyllic life before Castro in Cuba, where, I had a horse, I had a bicycle, I had a BB gun at the age of 6, that kind of idyllic existence, to being in an orphanage. And subsequently, when my parents came out, I mean, for the first 2 or 3 years, we were literally sub-poverty. We lived in a ghetto housing, and my mom worked in a sweatshop, and my dad worked 2 jobs for as long as I could remember. And so that is part of forging your metal. I think that going into pararescue, I started martial arts when I was 15. I lifted weights. I was always fighting. All that. I thought I was tough until I got to pararescue. Then after 3 days of puking, I realized, hey, you better cowboy up. And I made it, thankfully, not because I'm a gifted athlete, just because the word quit is not in the dictionary here. So I think that was another big forging of my metal, going through something so physically challenging that, you learn to embrace the suck. And when the moment comes later on in life and you have doubt, you go, wait a minute, I've been through worse,
Yeah.
physically and mentally. So I think that that's part of that forging. Of course, the agency itself, the different, epochs that I did were all part of forging to end up being what I am now. A guy who is very proud of his life, very proud of his family, but most importantly, very proud of my country.
Yeah, as you should be. One of the things I've always been fascinated by and kind of wish was true is, I don't know if there's a potential, but is time travel. Um, so if you had the ability to time travel at different point, and I'm gonna give 3 different points of your life. If you had the power and the ability to time travel, for the first point would be when you went to that refuge, Pueblo, Colorado. The second one, did you attend George Mason University in person?
That's why
Okay.
I got
Studying
congratulations.
international relations, is that right? Okay. Yeah. So we'll say if you could go back in time and give a message to yourself at 10 years old in the orphanage, flash forward to when you were studying international relations in the 80s. There were so many things going on in the 80s internationally, right? And then the last one would be, well, I guess it would have been before that, whenever you were going through pararescue training. What message would you give to those versions of yourself, knowing everything that you know now?
Well, the first one is the easiest because if I would have known then what I know now, I would have told my dad as soon as Carster took over in '59, let's get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
You as a family, before he lost everything, because that's the other thing. We were a middle class family. We had a TV. My dad had a '57 Pontiac. And
Man, I looked it up. I had to look it up. Oh God, man, I felt that hit that I felt for you just for the loss of that car.
I know, me too. I'm a car
Oh,
guy. But think
Oh,
about it. I mean, that being able to tell my dad, hey, sell all this stuff. Let's go to America. That would have been the first one and very easy. The orphanage is a little harder because that wasn't a choice that anybody made other than it was the realities that I had to live with. And the orphanage was tough, and I learned to fight, and I learned to stand up for myself very quickly. But I was one of the few kids that didn't cry. I don't, at night you could hear other kids crying in bed. And because the way my dad brought me up, I think that the only thing that I would do different is I would try to have the leadership capabilities that I didn't have at 11, because I turned 11 at the orphanage, to try to mentor some of those younger kids and give them some kind of a hope. But again, at 11, you're not thinking of those things. But in hindsight, like you said, time travel, which is a fascinating subject anyway, um, without a doubt. Pararescue, I actually do a lot with that. I presently have 4 individuals that I am mentoring that are wanting to go to SEALs, that are wanting to go into pararescue, that want to go into CIA. I just got a text message from this young kid who's a phenom. He's like 17 years old. He's graduated high school. He's on his second year of college, you know, fit and everything else. But I have 2 Navy SEAL. My best friend is a Navy SEAL. Was a Navy SEAL. He was Force Master Chief for the SEALs, and I've had 2, we call them tadpoles, that reached out to me in this last year, and I taught them how to shoot pistol and gun, got them scuba qualified. I got them to jump out of an airplane, and I brainwashed them into the mental fortitude that you have to have and the conviction that you have to have. Um, so if yeah, going back in this case is not an issue because I'm doing that as we speak. It's something I'm very proud of, and I call it paying it forward. The people that helped me when I was climbing through these obstacle courses, I can't thank them. They're either dead or too old or don't give it.
yeah.
Yeah, but passing it forward to me is my way of honoring them. Guys like Billy Waugh, Cofer Black, and several others. George Mason was a big step for me. I had 2 years of college, primarily drawn from what I did in the military, and with I rode rescue as you read for 6 years in the 70s in Miami. So I was a damn good medic because every time I was on shift, we were going to a gunshot or an overdose or
Yeah.
crazy stuff, and some bad memories from there, as a matter of fact, more than anything else. Um, but yeah, George Mason was kind of like the polishing. I was a diamond in the rough, a blunt object, and that was the beginning of my polishing. And it was international affairs, but the actual topic was intercultural conflicts. So I studied things like religion and politics and history and all the things that get people mad at each other. Because I already knew that I had a job with the agency. The agency sponsored me for the last year that I had to do. And that part of it is just a very big growing in a positive way. But I had the luxury that I didn't have student loans. I was getting paid. My job as a GS-11
Yeah.
to go through school. So
Oh, that's really cool. I'm
very,
sure at least, one bright side when you were working on Miami, I bet you had an amazing tan. I bet you just
you couldn't escape that,
you couldn't
especially.
escape that.
uh,
Something you said really stuck with me. You said dealing with the realities of life. What would your advice be if someone came up to you right now and says, Rick, I need some advice about dealing with the realities of life? What would you say?
I believe that what gets me through the realities of life is my faith. I am not a big go to church kind of guy. I pray every day, twice a day. Definitely believe that God put us on this earth for a reason. Um, but you have to understand that the life is not fair. Anybody who says that it's supposed to be fair hasn't read the manual. Just look at history from time immemorial. Life is not fair. From Genghis Khan to Attila the Hun, we've had these kind of conflicts internationally. I think the human person is the cruelest animal, or can be the cruelest animal on this earth. So yeah, for me, I think that it is just basically understanding that you build your own life. For me, for example, one of my biggest bastions of strength is my friends. I
Yeah.
have a very, very well delineated concentric circles of, who is your friend, who's your acquaintance, who is your really good friend. I had my last deputy in the agency who to this day is one of my best friends. Well, we were having this conversation about friendship, and he says, boss, says a friend will help you move the furniture. A good friend will help you move the body. And I said, man, I'm keeping that one. So knowing who your friends are, that's your bastion. Like, when I've had a couple of things in my life where I have friends that I can go to and I can be very frank with. And I tell my wife, because she comes from a very different world, I have friends of mine that if somebody harms a hair on her head, they're done. Uh,
Yeah.
that's very important, have that mechanism, but that's something you build, and that's something that you have to really work at. And to tell you the truth, I learned that from my dad. My dad was a simple man. He was a carpenter. He had a coffee roasting company in Cuba very successfully, but he ended, going back to being a carpenter, and that's how he made a living in the United States. But my dad had friends everywhere, not
Yeah.
lawyers and Indian chiefs, people that when my dad passed, they were at the funeral. My dad was that kind of individual that was always there for his friends and vice versa.
You actually talk about your dad in the book about being the carpenter in Miami, and then the coffee shop in Cuba was taken over, right? Or just confiscated, maybe is the right. Yeah. You had that quote about a good friend will help you move, a great friend will help you move the body. That might have that as like the intro for this podcast. Like that's a very clip of a moment. I have one last serious question. Then I want to get into some fun lighter stuff, but these are just things I was like, I have to talk to Rick about this stuff, or just at least ask. Just was there one internal, because you've experienced so much, and it's not even like you experienced them at different points of your life too. So it's not even they're all big struggles, not but it wasn't like, hey, this was just a 5 year rough stretch. I mean, this is probably 30 plus years if you really maybe even more if you break it down. But was there one internal belief that kept you alive in chaos but nearly cost you your identity?
Not my identity. I think that was just, as a matter of fact, the things like that tend to crystallize your identity because you have to confront the reality. You have to confront your fears. You have to conquer your fears. Um, but I go back to my maternal grandfather and my dad. They both were very stoic men. They were tough guys. My dad was a tough guy. I mean, my guy
Yeah.
was a no nonsense kind of guy. In town, everybody respected my dad and his brother, my godfather. But it is, I think that's something that I learned by example from the very beginning, how to be a man. And one anecdote that you read in the book, when I was actually leaving Cuba, I was at the airport. My mom was blowing snub bubbles. She was crying her eyes out. And I told my dad, I said, if she keeps crying, I ain't leaving. And my dad took a knee, put his hand on my shoulder, and said to me, he says, I will see you again. That little phrase was my security blanket for the next 8 months. Because I knew that if my dad had to get on a surfboard and paddle to the United States, I was going to see my dad again. I never had that doubt. And I think that the success of that faith and that conviction has helped me throughout. From the book, again, you've seen that I've been in harm's way more than two or three times. And to this day, I'm still amazed at how I handle these kind of things. I think it's just part of the wiring, part of the example. Um, it's a zone issue, and I think that that's something that I developed. But the seeds of all that is my grandfather and my dad.
Wow. Yeah, that was a tough part of the book. Just reading about your mom as you were leaving, and I was like, man. And I mean, it'd be hard in present day, but back then, I mean, this is again 1962. There wasn't social media. There wasn't a cell phone. I mean, it was just you don't know, and you can't look on the computer and see what's going on. You only know what you hear I mean, it's still controlled now, but I would say even more so back then. Um, I mean, just yeah. I mean, you really grew up at 10 years old, I guess, right?
But think about it, for those 8 months, I never received a letter from my parents, never had a phone call. I had no contact whatsoever with my family until they came out. And I know exactly what I was playing basketball after dinner in the yard when the nun came out and called me over, and the phone was there on the desk with off the receiver, and it was my dad. That's the first time that I heard any word from my family in 8 months.
Wow. Do you mind? What did he say to you in that moment?
Well, primarily, it was very short again because
Yeah.
he was borrowing somebody's neighbor's phone because we didn't even have a phone in the house. And it was primarily, hey, we're here. We've already applied to bringing you back. They said it's going to be maybe 30 days. But we're here. We're waiting for you. And both mom and dad are here. Blah blah. So your cousins also came out, and that was it. And I guess that's the only time that I cried, but it was out of joy. It
Mm.
wasn't, and out of relief, I guess. To a big degree. Yeah.
Man, I want to transition some lighter topics and and ask you about someone that we talked about earlier who kind of had like not a similar path, but a shared maybe shared feelings and a shared rough journey. But what comes to mind when I say the name Robert Hamilton Owens?
Crazy.
Yeah.
The guy is insane. He is the most physically insane guy I've ever met in my life. I mean, this guy, the pain quotient does not exist with this guy. He's my age and he runs Iron Man, all these kind of things. But he's a fascinating guy because, like a lot of the pararescue guys, and I'm not being facetious here because they're my alma mater, but a lot of the guys in pararescue are individuals that are actually polished. They jump out of airplanes, they shoot things, they blow shit up, they do this and the other to get the rescue done and everything else. But it's like the Green Berets, 18 Deltas, which are their medics. They stand out because they have a little different approach, I think. And Robert is just one of those guys. He's just a fascinating guy that just sitting with him and comparing notes, and especially in our case, because we could talk about, hey, remember in scuba school? Oh yeah, yeah, uh, so because we were similar years too.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, have all the time in the world for him. I think he's a great guy, and I'm very glad that Scott also hooked me up with him.
Yeah, it's funny because Robert will send me like just random text and it's a video of him rowing or something, right? Or running in some desert or whatever the hell he's doing, just out of
Going
nowhere.
across the ocean. I mean,
Yeah,
he actually does
yeah,
that.
yeah, 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 yeah. And he looks fantastic. Like you look great as well. But he's living in California, so he's got a good complexion. He's out in the sun a lot. Actually, one other name I was going to ask you about was someone you just mentioned, Scott McGregor. What comes to mind?
Scott is one of the most um, eclectic guys that I've met in a long time. He's brilliant, very successful, but he's just a basic good human being. I mean, and he has created this organization, Top, that it's by invitation, and it grows with people that have made a difference and continue to make a difference. And I was very honored when he reached out to me and asked me to join, because he's doing something that is lacking in any of the social media, which is truthful, inner connectivity, inner working. I've done some great podcasts thanks to Scott, because people, Lindsley Dow, for example, when one leads to the other. So he's an exceptional individual, and I'm very honored to be part of that group of his, that pad.
Yeah, that pad. Same for me. And it's really changed because I've grown sick of the word networking because it just feels so icky and transactional where it's just someone wants something. Like don't pretend to be, if you want something, just ask. Don't pretend to be my friend or butter me up because it's so fake. And like for example, I was on a call with someone yesterday and they were hyping me up from the get-go and then the ask came. It's just it's and I don't think about the compliment. It's just like those are empty compliments. Like you're just wanting something. But But I was dead serious when I say you probably had a great tan in the 80s in Miami. That was an honest, genuine compliment. So, hey, something else, Rand. I'm a huge baseball fan. I see you have a couple baseballs in the back behind you, behind your right shoulder. What are the stories with those, and who are they signed by?
Well, obviously, Cuban and baseball kind of goes hand in hand. I was a big baseball fan for many, many years, and one of them is Tony Perez, who was, you know,
Did you say Tony Perez?
Tony
Oh,
Perez,
yeah.
and then the other is uh, Louis Tiant. Uh,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
he was always one of my favorite pitchers,
Yeah.
and that pitching style of his leg way the heck up, he would
Yes.
bloody nuts, and as by the usual Prado luck would have it, this friend of mine from Boston, who's a minority owner of the Red Sox, is the one that introduced me and got me that ball signed. So that was I got to meet Mini Minoso, who was another great Cuban player. I actually have a baseball collection of every baseball player who played professional ball. And I'm talking about tobacco cards to, I think I stopped doing it around 1993 or so, collecting, because by then it was like every baseball player had 37 cards that would come out every year and it just became,
Yeah.
but that was always a fanatic thing. Yeah. So I have a few here. I have a few in other places signed by a couple of other people. So yeah.
No, man, that's really cool. Yeah, I used to collect baseball cards. I was born in 1981, but like 89 through basically like 92 was they call it the junk wax era because there was I mean thousands and thousands. There's no rare cards unless it's a typo or something.
Yeah,
But
100%.
yeah, I always like the World Baseball Classic is always fun to watch, and the Latin American teams are every time they show the lineups, it's stupid how stacked and stacked it is. It's like oh, and a pro baseball team, like the big hitters, obviously like the 3 through 5 hitters, but on some of these teams for these countries, it's 1 through 9. It's it's like how do you
Yeah.
pitch against that?
It's funny because I studied Japanese and I was in Tokyo doing my immersion, and there was a guy named Oreste de Estrade.
He used to play for the Marlins, right? Yeah, and when they were in the expansion team, he was like their guy. He was the marquee name.
That's when they very first started. He was their first baseman,
Yep.
and but he was when I was studying there in Tokyo, he was the Japanese world record holder for home runs. He was a home run leader for the Seibu Lions was his team. So I got to see 3 or 4 games of his, and a cute anecdote because he went back to Japan afterwards, and he speaks Japanese, but at that opening game, they had a the exhibition game. First game that Marlins ever played was with the Cleveland Indians, which were my oldest son's favorite team. And I wore my Seibu Lions hat. So he's in first base, and of course, this is at Homestead Air Force, Homestead Stadium, which is small. So he's like AAA.
Yeah.
And so I go behind first base, and when I see that he throws the ball, I yell out to him. I said, "Destrade-san, watashi mo Cuban jin desu," which means that Mr. Destrade, I'm also Cuban. And he goes like this, like, don't throw the ball. Don't throw. He turns on. So now you have 2 Cubans speaking Japanese in Homestead from first base to the you can't make that up. You just cannot make that up. And that is one of the most wonderful moments in my unplanned thing because it just happened. When I saw him there, they just came out that and my wife was tickled. I mean, it was just quite an experience. Yeah.
Yeah, my first duty assignment. So I just retired from the Air Force, actually in November after 23 years as an intelligence analyst. So a little fun fact for you, but my first assignment was in Misawa, Japan, and northern Japan, and I mean, great time. I was there for 5 years. But my wife and I would go to Japanese baseball games, and we used to go to Sendai, was the closest big team, and just a fun time. I mean, Japanese baseball, it was something very special.
It is very different, isn't it? I
Very
mean,
different. Even the celebration, like the clapping and the like, yeah, it's different. Yes, 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 yes.
plastic baseball bats that they bring and they just clap and clap with them. And You could actually buy scotch. They serve everything, sushi. It's just like, except not hot dogs, but sushi. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Very different. And I always like the Tom Selleck movie Mr. Baseball, which came out in the early 90s. And and I think about that. So yeah. No, that was really cool. Is there like one baseball player that you ideal autograph, like man, my absolute, if I could have anyone from any era of baseball of all time, who would it be?
I think Mini Minoso was one of my all-time favorites. I did get to meet him, and I do have his autograph. I have
Yeah.
his, which was an excellent book. My father-in-law gave it to me, as a matter of fact. Um, but there was just so many of them. When I was living in very poverty, for the lack of a better word, we were near the Orioles spring training in Miami, which was right where now, it's one of the worst neighborhoods around there anyway. So it was a dilapidated place, but that's where they played. And I didn't have a nickel to get into the games. So we used to sneak in, and I found out that if I went under the bleachers, I could go to the dugout of the visiting team and I could watch the games from there, right? And not get caught, because a lot of my friends were getting bounced out. And true story, I'm sitting there and Yogi Berra walks into the dugout, and he had just reached into his jacket and had a piece of gum to put in his mouth. He looked at me and he passed me the piece of gum through the chicken wire that was the dugout. That moment is tattooed in my brain, because that was for me, you know, Sandy Koufax coming out, and we're out there, and I barely spoke English, for God's sake. I was 11 years old, maybe 12, and you know, one of the kids I was with, he asked him, and he said, I want to be a pitcher," and he's giving him hints and everything else. It was just such a different culture back then. That baseball was really made with some really interesting people. I think that, too much money spoils a lot of people, and I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of good athletes out there doing good things, role models, and helping society. But the percentages have changed, I think. Yeah.
I've never heard you tell that Yogi Berra story. Have you shared that a whole lot?
No, I mean, maybe once or twice, but again, it's such a, unique topic to deviate to. And
Yeah.
since you brought out baseball, it was just, but that for me was, because like I said, I got to see Mickey Mantle. He was kind of a jerk. Roger Maris was there too, but Yogi was always one of my favorites. And I used to catch. That was I wanted to be a catcher.
Oh yeah.
And when he walked into that dugout and gave me that piece of gum, and the word wasn't exchanged. All I said was thank you. That was it, because I
Yeah.
kind of sad. But
Did you
yeah,
say you played catcher? Was that your position?
yeah, primarily.
Yeah, and that's what Tony Perez played, right? Is that
No, Tony was either shortstop or second base.
he was second? He was second. Okay, yeah. So I'm from Oklahoma and born and raised, but obviously it's been so many years now. But Mickey Mantle's from Oklahoma, but I've heard that he's a legend and Oklahoma's very proud. But I've also heard that he was a jerk. And then Johnny Bench is another, right? So very, and I've been a couple years ago. I got back into trading or buying baseball cards, and you could actually buy these heritage packs where I don't know if you're familiar with them, but for example, yeah, the night, and I think it was like 1967 was the pack that I was looking for. I think, and bottom line, with that pack, it was Mickey Mantle's last year and Johnny Bench's rookie year.
Wow.
So that was my goal. Was like if I could somehow get both of those cards from the same from the same type or the same year of cards or whatever, that'd been
Yeah.
something. I do just have a few questions, just wrapping up. If there was a giant billboard with your picture on it for the world to see, what would you want your billboard to say, and where would you want your billboard to be?
I would be taking a knee in front of Christ and giving thanks for what the kind of life He's given me and my family. And where would I want it to be? Everywhere that I could say that word, because I'm very proud of my faith. I wouldn't be here without it.
Yeah.
And again, you read the book, and there's a couple of hairy times in my life where, it wasn't brute force for the most part, uh, but I was able to, with composure and confidence, get out of some pretty tight spots. And that's, like when I started doing podcasts and stuff like that, was literally on TV, Fox News, live, of course, with Brian Kilby, one of my favorites. And I at the end of those sessions, I would come out and I would say to myself, where the hell did that come from? How could I speak so eloquently under this kind of pressure? And I always looked up and I go, thanks, because you are my source for the little wisdom that I have and that ability. And yeah, that would be a knee in front of my Christ and get the message to anybody that wants to turn it on.
That is a fantastic answer. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was pretty amazing. So tomorrow I'm actually releasing episode 114 of my podcast, but something I've started since episode 100 of my podcast is I want to connect each episode and each guest. I want to pass the torch between the guests and the episodes. One way I'm doing that is by asking whoever I'm speaking with, what's a future question or a quote I can use in a future episode with a guest?
Wow, that's a tough one. Don't use the your friend helping you move the body. Okay.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good life
That
advice.
is pretty good, but not everybody's going to take it as lighthearted. I mean, it's not literal. Let's put it that way. It's just a very good example. Um, no, I think that when each individual is so different, our life experiences, even Robert and myself, yes, we were both pararescuemen, but that was kind of like, crossing. He was coming here, or I went here, and
Yeah.
he went his way, and pararescues are a common denominator. But I think that touching what the person really feels is important to his or her life, accomplishments wise, blessings wise, family wise, you cannot go wrong with that, because that's get them to speak from the heart. And I think that that's the best thing that anybody can do when they're having a podcast, is speak from the heart. Like you said earlier, there's a lot of people that get there on that soapbox and they're trying to sell soap. I'm not saying that I'm not pushing my book, because I am, but that there's a higher cost for that too.
Yeah.
Needed to pass the message. And again, it was not something that I chose. It was something that, kind of like a couple of 2x4s upside the head, got me to finally do it. So yeah.
Rick, thank you so much. What can I do for you? How can I best serve you?
Just keep doing what you're doing, Martin. It's so important, because we have a very literate country, but most people don't read. Most people don't watch anything other than stupid stuff. And guys like you have this message that you're putting out, and obviously you're bringing in guests, with all due modesty, that you have respect for. And I think that by you propagating these stories, some kid is going to listen to this show and go, "Oh wow, maybe I can do this, or I can do this, or this is important." So first of all, thank you for your service, because you did 20 years in the Air Force for us. Um, but you're doing a huge job now too, because you're propagating an image that others can learn from, hopefully, and can be positively influenced by.
Rick, thank you so much for those kind words. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice, for your integrity, for your leadership, your mentorship, your airmanship. This has truly been an honor. And I'm just so glad that you came on my podcast and we were able to have this conversation. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Rick. I appreciate you.
I have enjoyed it thoroughly. It's been one of my most fun podcasts. I really mean that. Had a great time.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to stop recording.